the night my brother Marcus stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made him birthday cakes for 30 years, and screamed those venomous words at me. Something inside me shattered. At 72 years old, after raising him when our parents died, after supporting him through 2 divorces and countless failed businesses, I discovered he'd been stealing from me for years. But what happened next proved that sometimes the family that destroys you isn't the one that defines you. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Eleanor Thompson, though everyone calls me Ellie. For 47 years I taught 3rd grade at Riverside Elementary School in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Every morning I'd wake up at 5:30, make breakfast for my husband Robert, and head to school where 5-8-year-olds would fill my day with their questions, their struggles, and their little triumphs. I loved every minute of it. Robert and I never had children of our own. We tried for years, spent our savings on treatments that left us heartbroken and empty-handed. But we had each other, and we had Marcus. My little brother was just 16 when our parents died in that awful car accident on Highway 30. I was 20, newly married, and suddenly responsible for a teenager who'd lost his whole world. Marcus moved in with Robert and me the day after the funeral. I still remember him standing in our spare bedroom, looking so lost, holding the box of baseball trophies that Dad had been so proud of. "I don't want to be here," he'd said, not mean, just honest in the way teenagers are when their hearts are breaking. "I know," I told him, "but we're family. We'll figure it out together." And we did for a while. I helped him with homework at that same kitchen table where Robert would quiz him for history tests. I attended every baseball game his senior year, cheering louder than any parent in the stands. When he got into Iowa State University, Robert and I covered what his scholarship didn't. When he graduated, we were there in the front row, tears streaming down our faces. Marcus became a real estate agent, and a successful one at that. He had this charm about him, this way of making people trust him instantly. Dad would have been so proud. Marcus married young to a sweet girl named Jennifer, and they had 2 kids, Tyler and Emma. For years, we were the family I'd always dreamed of. Sunday dinners at my house, the kids calling me Aunt Ellie, Marcus bringing Robert to his golf games. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. The first divorce was hard on everyone. Jennifer took the kids to Minnesota and Marcus threw himself into work. He started making bigger deals, taking bigger risks. When he remarried just a year later to a woman half his age, I bit my tongue. When that marriage fell apart 3 years later, I helped him pay for the lawyer. "You've always been there for me, Ellie," he'd said, sitting in my kitchen after signing the divorce papers. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Robert passed away 5 years ago. Lung cancer, though he'd never smoked a day in his life. Those last months were the hardest of my life, watching the man I'd loved since I was 19 fade away. Marcus was there for the funeral, of course. He gave a beautiful eulogy about how Robert had been the father he'd needed after losing our parents. After Robert died, the house felt too big, too empty. I'd walk through rooms filled with 40 years of memories, and the silence would crush me. Marcus started coming by more often, checking on me. He'd bring groceries, help with yard work, sit with me in the evenings when the loneliness got too heavy. Then I had the stroke. It was minor, the doctors said. I was lucky, but it scared me. There I was, 70 years old, lying in a hospital bed, and all I could think was, what if something worse happens? What if I can't take care of myself? Marcus was there within an hour of getting the call. He held my hand, told me everything would be okay. "Let me help you, Ellie," he'd said. "Let me handle the bills, the house stuff. You just focus on getting better. We're family, remember. We figure it out together." Those were my own words coming back to me from all those years ago. How could I say no? He was so earnest, so concerned. This was my little brother, the boy I'd raised, the one person left in the world who shared my blood, my history, my parents' eyes. I signed the power of attorney papers right there in the hospital. The nurse witnessed it, smiled at us, said something about how lucky I was to have family who cared so much. For 2 years, everything seemed fine. Marcus would come by every Tuesday, Go through the mail with me, explain what he was paying, how he was managing my retirement accounts. I'd taught school for 47 years. Robert had worked for John Deere for 45. We'd been careful savers, modest spenders. We had enough to keep me comfortable for whatever years I had left. Or so I thought. The first sign something was wrong came when I tried to buy groceries at Hy-Vee. My card was declined. Not the credit card, my debit card, linked to the checking account that had held steady for decades. Must be a mistake, the cashier said kindly, recognizing me from years of shopping there. The bank system goes down sometimes. I paid with cash from my purse, but something cold settled in my stomach. When I got home, I called the bank. The account had $12 in it. $12 when there should have been thousands. There must be some mistake, I told the customer service representative. I show several large transfers over the past 18 months, she said. All authorized by your power of attorney, Marcus Thompson. My hands were shaking as I hung up the phone. There had to be an explanation. Marcus would never, he couldn't. I spent the next 3 days going through every paper I could find, calling banks, investment companies. The credit union. The picture that emerged was devastating. Over $200,000. Gone. Transferred to accounts I didn't recognize, spent on things I'd never approved. My retirement savings decimated. The college funds Robert and I had set up for Tyler and Emma empty. But the worst discovery came when I found the document in Marcus's briefcase. He'd left it on my kitchen counter after his last visit. A purchase agreement for my house, my home of 40 years, with a forged signature that looked nothing like mine. The closing date was 2 weeks away. I confronted him that night. I called him, asked him to come over, said it was important. He arrived all smiles and concern, carrying Chinese takeout from the place I liked. Marcus, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We need to talk about my accounts. His face changed so quickly it was like watching a mask slip. What about them? The money is gone. My retirement, the kids' college funds, all of it. You don't understand finance, Ellie. I've been investing it, making it grow, but putting it in your accounts. By forging my signature to sell my house. That's when the mask didn't just slip, it shattered completely. His face contorted into something I'd never seen before, something ugly and foreign. He stood up so fast his chair tipped over, and he leaned across the table, his face inches from mine. You want to know the truth? He snarled. I'm tired of being grateful. Tired of owing you. You held it over my head my whole life. How you raised me, how you sacrificed for me. Well, I never asked for that. Marcus, please. No. He slammed his hand on the table. You know what your problem is, Ellie. You're old. You're pathetic. You sit in this house like some ghost, clinging to memories of a dead husband and a life that's over. Tears were running down my face, but he wasn't done. He walked to the door, then turned back, and his next words cut deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. You'll die alone, Ellie. Nobody will love you. Nobody. You think those kids of mine care about their ancient aunt? You think anyone will even notice when you're gone? I'm doing you a favor. At least in a nursing home, someone will be paid to pretend to care. The door slammed behind him, and I sat there in my kitchen, the Chinese food getting cold on the counter, my brother's words echoing in the silence. The boy I'd raised, the one I'd loved like my own son, had just torn my heart out and stomped on it. But as I sat there in the ruins of everything I'd believed about my family, something else began to stir. Not just hurt, not just betrayal, but something harder, stronger, determination. Marcus thought I was weak, helpless, already gone. He was wrong, and I was going to prove it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Robert's old recliner, wrapped in the quilt my mother had made, and watched the clock tick toward morning. Every hour that passed, Marcus's words played on repeat in my mind. You'll die alone. Nobody will love you. At 3 a.m, I made myself a cup of tea with shaking hands. At 4, I started making a list. At 5, I called my friend Dorothy, who I'd taught with for 30 years. Ellie, good Lord, what are you doing up at this hour? Dorothy, I need help. Can you come over? She was at my door by 6, still in her pajama pants and her late husband's old cardigan. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. What happened, honey? I told her everything. The missing money, the forged documents, Marcus's cruel words. She listened, her face cycling through shock, disbelief, and finally, pure rage. That little snake, she hissed. After everything you did for him. I don't know what to do, Dorothy. He has power of attorney. The house sale is supposed to close in 2 weeks. I have $12 in my checking account. Dorothy grabbed my hands. First thing, we're going to the bank. Then we're finding you a lawyer. That boy may think you're alone, but he forgot something important. Teachers stick together. By 8 o'clock, we were sitting in the bank manager's office. Mr. Peterson had known Robert and me for 30 years. His daughter had been in my class. When I explained what had happened, his face went pale. Mrs. Thompson, this is serious. This is elder abuse, fraud, possibly identity theft. We need to freeze your accounts immediately and contact the authorities. Can we stop the house sale? If the signature is forged, absolutely. But you'll need to act fast. Dorothy drove me to the police station next. I filed a report with a young officer who looked like he could have been one of my students. He was kind but honest. Mom, cases like this are complicated when family is involved. You'll need documentation, proof of the forgery, evidence of financial exploitation. Do you have anyone who can help you navigate this? That's when I met Sarah Chen. Sarah worked for Elder Services, specifically with financial abuse cases. The officer called her, and she came to the station within an hour. She was 35, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner that reminded me of myself in the classroom. Miss Thompson, Ellie, I want you to know that what's happening to you happens to thousands of elderly people every year. Most of them never report it because the abuser is family. I don't feel brave, I admitted. I feel stupid. How did I not see this? You trusted your brother. That's not stupid, that's human. Now, let's talk about what we need to do. Sarah became my lifeline over the next week. She helped me gather bank statements, track down the forged documents, even found evidence that Marcus had taken out credit cards in my name. The debt he'd accumulated was staggering, but the most painful discovery came when Sarah found records of Marcus selling items from my house. Robert's watch, my mother's jewelry, even some of the baseball trophies our father had been so proud of. Marcus had sold them all online. He's been planning this for a long time, Sarah said gently. This isn't impulse or desperation, this is calculated. We contacted the title company about the house sale. When they saw the obviously forged signature, they immediately halted the transaction. Marcus had already spent the earnest money the buyers had put down. 3 days into our investigation, I got an unexpected visitor. Tom Bradley lived 2 houses down, a widower like me who'd retired from the Des Moines Police Department. We'd exchanged pleasantries over the years, nothing more, but there he stood on my porch with a plate of cookies and a determined expression. Ellie, I heard what's happening from Dorothy. I want to help. Tom, that's kind, but. No buts. I was a detective for 30 years. I specialized in financial crimes. Your brother picked the wrong neighbor to mess with. Tom threw himself into my case with the energy of a man half his age. He had contacts throughout law enforcement, knew which judges were sympathetic to elder abuse cases, and most importantly, he knew how to build an airtight case. Your brother made mistakes. Tom told me one evening as we went through credit card statements. He got greedy, sloppy. Look here. He used your card to buy his girlfriend jewelry, but he had it shipped to his office. That's fraud across state lines. That makes it federal. While Tom and Sarah built the legal case, Dorothy mobilized what she called the teacher mafia. Within days, I had a parade of former colleagues bringing casseroles, offering support, and sharing their own stories. My brother-in-law did the same thing to his mother, said Janet from the science department. We got her money back, every penny. You will too. My nephew tried this with my sister, added Barbara, who'd taught kindergarten. He's in prison now. Good riddance. Their stories should have been depressing, but instead they gave me strength. I wasn't alone. This happened to people, good people, trusting people. And they fought back. A week after Marcus's explosion, I had my first meeting with my new lawyer, Patricia Hartley. She was in her 60s with silver hair and a handshake that could crack walnuts. I don't usually take cases like this, she said bluntly. But Sarah Chen called in a favor, and after reviewing your documentation, I'm personally offended by what your brother has done. We're not just going to stop him, Ellie. We're going to bury him. Patricia explained the plan. First, we'd petition the court to revoke Marcus's power of attorney immediately. Then we'd file criminal charges for fraud, elder abuse, and identity theft. Finally, We'd sue him civilly to recover what he'd stolen. Hell fight, she warned. He'll say you're senile, that you agreed to everything, that he was protecting you from yourself. Let him try, I said, surprising myself with my firmness. I kept every receipt, every bank statement, every document for the last 40 years. Robert always said I was too organized for my own good. Let's see if he was right. The court hearing to revoke the power of attorney was scheduled for the following Monday. That gave us 4 days to prepare. Patricia drilled me on potential questions, Sarah gathered medical records to prove my mental competence, and Tom compiled a timeline of Marcus's thefts that was devastating in its thoroughness. But the most unexpected support came from Marcus's ex-wife Jennifer. She called me on Saturday night. Ellie, I heard what Marcus is doing to you. I want you to know that Tyler and Emma don't know their college funds are gone, but when they find out, they already barely speak to him after what he did during our divorce. This will be the final straw. I don't want to turn them against their father, I said, even though part of me did. You're not, he is. Ellie, he did the same thing to his business partner last year. The man lost everything. Marcus has become someone I don't recognize, someone cruel and calculating. Don't let him win. That Sunday, I went to church for the first time since Robert's funeral. I sat in the back pew, not sure why I was there. But when Pastor Williams spoke about David facing Goliath, about how the smallest person with right on their side could defeat a giant, I felt something shift inside me. Marcus thought I was weak because I was alone, because I had trusted him. But I had been a teacher for 47 years. I had faced down angry parents, troubled children, budget cuts, and administrative battles. I had raised a teenager while barely out of my teens myself. I had held my husband's hand as he took his last breath and found the strength to keep living. I was not weak. I was not alone. And tomorrow, in that courtroom, Marcus was going to learn what happened when you underestimated Eleanor Thompson. That night, I pulled out the photo album from Marcus's high school graduation. There he was, 18 years old, smiling with his whole future ahead of him. I traced his face with my finger, grieving not for the money he'd stolen, but for the boy he'd been, the man he could have been. I'm sorry, Marcus, I whispered to the photo. I'm sorry for whatever I did that made you hate me this much. But I'm not sorry for what I'm about to do. You were wrong about me dying alone and unloved. But you were right about one thing. I am old. Too old to let you get away with this. I closed the album and set my alarm. Tomorrow, the fight would begin. Monday morning arrived grey and drizzling, the kind of Iowa weather that seeps into your bones. Dorothy picked me up at 7, even though the hearing wasn't until 9. You need breakfast, she insisted, but I could barely manage toast and tea. My stomach was in knots. I wore my best dress, the navy blue one I'd bought for Robert's funeral. It seemed appropriate. I was mourning the death of the brother I thought I knew. Patricia had coached me on courtroom appearance. Look respectable but not wealthy. Vulnerable but not weak. Let the judge see you as the retired schoolteacher you are, not the victim Marcus wants to paint you as. The courthouse in downtown Cedar Rapids was intimidating, all marble and echoing footsteps. Sarah met us at the entrance with Tom, who'd worn his old dress uniform from the police force. For moral support, he said with a wink. Judges respect the badge, even a retired one. Patricia was already there, setting up at the plaintiff's table with military precision. She'd brought 3 boxes of evidence, all meticulously labeled and indexed. Marcus hired Stuart Brennan, she told me quietly. He's good but predictable. He'll try to paint you as confused, possibly showing signs of dementia. Don't let him rattle you. At exactly 9 o'clock, Marcus walked in with his lawyer. He was wearing an expensive suit I was sure my money had paid for. When our eyes met, he smirked. That smirk, more than anything, steeled my resolve. Judge Patricia Williams, a different Patricia, which seemed like a sign, entered the courtroom. She was about my age, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. I'd later learned she'd dealt with elder abuse cases before and had little patience for family members who exploited their elderly relatives. We're here for an emergency petition to revoke power of attorney in the matter of Eleanor Thompson versus Marcus Thompson. The bailiff announced. Patricia stood. Your Honor, we're seeking immediate revocation of Mr. Marcus Thompson's power of attorney over Mrs. Eleanor Thompson, as well as a restraining order preventing him from accessing any of her accounts or property. We have evidence of systematic financial exploitation, fraud, and elder abuse. Stuart Brennan rose. Your Honor, this is a family misunderstanding blown out of proportion. My client has been dutifully caring for his elderly sister, making sound financial decisions on her behalf. Thompson is confused and being influenced by outside parties who don't understand the family dynamics. Judge Williams looked at him over her glasses. We'll see about that. Hartley, present your evidence. Patricia was magnificent. She laid out the case piece by piece, the drained accounts, the forged signature on the house sale, the credit cards opened in my name. She had Tom testify about his investigation, showing a clear pattern of theft spanning 18 months. Detective Bradley, in your professional opinion, is this a case of mismanagement or criminal fraud? Criminal fraud, without question, Tom said firmly. I've seen hundreds of these cases. This is textbook elder financial exploitation. Sarah testified next about my mental competence. I've administered 3 separate cognitive assessments to Mrs. Thompson. She scored perfectly on all of them. There's absolutely no sign of diminished capacity or confusion. Then came the most powerful evidence. The security footage Patricia had obtained from my bank. It showed Marcus making large cash withdrawals using my debit card, timestamps proving I was at doctor's appointments or grocery shopping at the exact same times. He had duplicate cards made. Patricia explained. He was literally robbing her while she was getting her medication. When Brennan cross-examined me, he tried every trick Patricia had warned me about. Mrs. Thompson, isn't it true you've been forgetful lately? No more than any 72-year-old who's grieving her husband and recovering from a stroke. You had a stroke. Doesn't that affect mental capacity? It was a minor stroke affecting my motor functions, not my cognitive abilities. I can still recite all 50 states in alphabetical order, if you'd like. I taught 3rd grade for 47 years, Mr. Brennan. Would you like me to help you with your multiplication tables while I'm at it? Someone in the gallery snickered. Judge Williams hid a smile. You gave your brother power of attorney willingly, didn't you? Yes, because I trusted him. He was family. And now you want to take that away because of a simple disagreement. That's when I found my teacher voice, the one that could quiet a classroom of rowdy 8-year-olds. Mr. Brennan, my brother stole over $200,000 from me. He forged my signature to sell my home. He took out credit cards in my name and ran up $30,000 in debt. He sold my late husband's belongings and my mother's jewelry. That's not a disagreement. That's a betrayal of the deepest kind. Can you prove you didn't authorize these transactions? Patricia stood. Your Honor, I'd like to present Exhibit F. It was a recording. Somehow, Tom had thought to check if I had a security system with audio. I'd forgotten Robert had installed one years ago. It had captured Marcus's tirade that night in my kitchen, every cruel word crystal clear. The courtroom went silent as Marcus's voice filled the space. You'll die alone, Ellie! Nobody will love you! Nobody! I watched Marcus's face go white. His lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Judge Williams had heard enough. Mr. Thompson, would you like to explain that recording? Marcus stood, his charm fully deployed. Your Honor, I was frustrated. My sister is difficult, stubborn. I've been trying to help her, and she's been fighting me every step. I said things I didn't mean. And the missing money. Investments. I was trying to grow her assets. Do you have documentation of these investments? Silence. The forged signature on the house sale. She must have forgotten she signed it. Judge Williams's voice could have frozen water. Mr. Thompson, I've reviewed the signature on that document. I've seen Mrs. Thompson's actual signature on dozens of documents. Are you seriously suggesting this elderly woman forgot how to write her own name? Marcus's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, but Marcus pushed him away. His mask was slipping again. She owes me, he burst out. Do you have any idea what it was like being raised by a sister barely older than me? Everyone talking about poor orphan Marcus. Brave Ellie taking him in. I never asked for her charity. So you decided to steal from her? Judge Williams asked. It's not stealing when it's family money! Our parents would have left it to both of us if they'd lived. I deserved half of everything she and Robert saved. I was just taking what was mine. His lawyer actually put his head in his hands. Judge Williams made her ruling immediately. I'm granting the emergency petition. Marcus Thompson's power of attorney is revoked immediately. All of Mrs. Thompson's accounts are to be frozen pending investigation. Mr. Thompson, you are ordered to return all funds taken from your sister's accounts within 30 days. I don't have it, Marcus said sullenly. It's gone. Then you'll be facing criminal charges. Mrs. Hartley, I assume you'll be filing. Already prepared, Your Honor. Furthermore, I'm granting a restraining order. Thompson, you are not to come within 500 feet of Mrs. Thompson, her home, or any of her places of regular visit. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. She turned to me and her expression softened. Mrs. Thompson, I'm sorry for what you've endured. No one should face this kind of betrayal, especially from family. The court will do everything in its power to see justice done. As we left the courtroom, Marcus tried one more time. I'm your brother. You raised me. I stopped and looked at him, really looked at him. This stranger wearing my brother's face. Yes, I raised you, I said quietly. I loved you like my own son. I gave you everything I had, and you're right, you never asked for it. But Marcus, I never asked to be robbed by the boy I tucked into bed for 2 years, who I helped with homework, who I cheered for at every game. I never asked to have my heart broken by the only family I have left. Ellie, you said I'd die alone and unloved. Look around, Marcus. He did. The courtroom gallery was full. Dorothy, Tom, Sarah, a dozen former colleagues, even Jennifer had come. They all stood as I walked past, a silent show of support. I'm not alone, I told him. I never was. You are. Security stepped between us as Marcus lunged forward, his face twisted with rage. His lawyer held him back, and the last thing I heard as we left was Marcus screaming that I'd regret this, that I was nothing without him, that I needed him. Outside the courthouse, I stood in the drizzling rain and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking, my knees weak, but I was standing. Tom put his hand on my shoulder. You did good in there, Ellie. Over, Patricia warned. The criminal trial will be harder. He'll have time to prepare a defense. I know, I said, but today I won. Today, I stood up to him. Dorothy hugged me tight. How about we get some lunch, my treat? As we walked toward Dorothy's car, Sarah fell into step beside me. Ellie, I need to tell you something. We've been investigating Marcus's activities, and you're not his only victim. There are at least 3 others, elderly clients from his real estate business. I stopped. Others were building a federal case. This could be bigger than we thought. I thought about those other elderly people, probably sitting alone, wondering how someone they trusted could betray them so thoroughly. Whatever you need from me, you have it. That night, I sat in my kitchen, in my house that wasn't being sold, and ate Chinese food from the place I liked, the same food that had gone cold the night Marcus revealed his true self. This time I finished every bite. The phone rang around 8. It was Tyler, Marcus's son, Aunt Ellie. Mom told me what Dad did. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Oh, sweetheart, this isn't your fault. Emma and I want to come see you. Would that be okay? Of course it would. After we hung up, I sat in Robert's chair and thought about family. The family you're born with, the family you choose, the family that chooses you. Marcus was wrong. I wouldn't die alone. I was surrounded by love. It just didn't look the way I'd expected it to. The weeks following the hearing revealed just how deep Marcus's deceptions ran. Every day brought new discoveries, each more shocking than the last. Tom had set up what he called Command Central. In my dining room, boxes of documents, charts on the walls, a laptop constantly pinging with new information. Ellie, you need to see this, Tom said one morning 3 weeks after the hearing. He'd been tracking Marcus's spending patterns. He wasn't just stealing from you. He was running a whole operation. The evidence was damning. Marcus had been targeting elderly clients for years, especially widows and widowers who came to him for help selling their homes after losing spouses. He'd gain their trust, offer to help with finances, and slowly drain their accounts. Mrs. Dolores Garrison, 81, Sarah Reed from her file, lost her husband 2 years ago. Marcus sold her house for $400,000, but told her it went for $300,000. Pocketed the difference. Harold Mitchell, 77. Tom added, Marcus convinced him to invest his retirement in a real estate venture that never existed. Betty Farmington, 83. Sarah continued, this one's the worst. She's in a nursing home now, medical ward. Marcus took everything. She has nothing left. I felt sick. Betty Farmington had been in my church. I remembered her from the funeral luncheons, always bringing her famous potato salad. Can we visit her? I'll arrange it, Sarah said softly. That afternoon, Tyler and Emma came to see me. They were 25 and 23 now, adults with their own lives. Tyler worked as an engineer in Des Moines. Emma was finishing law school at the University of Iowa. They sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped their father with homework decades ago, and Emma cried. We knew something was wrong, she said. Dad kept buying things: a boat, a new Mercedes, that ridiculous condo in Chicago. When we asked where the money came from, he said business was good. Tyler's jaw was clenched. He tried to get me to give him access to my investment accounts last year, said he could triple my money. When I refused, he called me ungrateful, said I was just like Mom, always thinking the worst of him. He's sick, Aunt Ellie, Emma said. Something's broken in him. This isn't the dad who taught me to ride a bike or came to my piano recitals. When did he change? I asked, though I wondered if he'd changed at all, or if this had always been there, hidden beneath the surface. After the second divorce, Tyler said. He became obsessed with money, with showing everyone how successful he was. He'd talk about you and Uncle Robert. How you lived such small lives, never taking risks, never really living. He said he wasn't going to die with regrets like Uncle Robert. That stung. Robert had lived a beautiful life, quiet, yes, but full of love and purpose. We'd traveled when we could, supported our community, raised Marcus. If that was small to Marcus, then he'd learn nothing from us. The next day I visited Betty Farmington. The nursing home smelled of disinfectant and sadness. Betty was in a wheelchair by the window, staring at nothing. She didn't recognize me at first. Betty, it's Ellie Thompson. From church. Her eyes focused slowly. Ellie, is that you? Yes, dear. I came to see you. No one comes to see me anymore, she said, her voice hollow. My children live so far away and I can't tell them what happened. That nice young man, Marcus, he said he was helping me. He said I was like a mother to him. I held her hand, papery thin and trembling. Betty, Marcus is my brother. He stole from me too. Her eyes widened. Your brother? Oh, Ellie, I'm so sorry. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to make this right. Betty, I promise you. He took it all, she whispered. My husband's pension, our savings, even sold my mother's ring. I have nothing left to leave my children, nothing but shame. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat up writing a letter to the district attorney, detailing everything I knew about Marcus's victims. At 3 a.m, my doorbell rang. My heart pounded. The restraining order should have kept Marcus away. But it was Tom, still in his pajamas with his laptop. Ellie, I'm sorry to wake you, but the FBI just contacted me. They've been investigating Marcus for 6 months. They want to meet with you tomorrow. The FBI. My little brother was being investigated by the FBI. The next morning, 2 agents came to my house. Agent Sarah Foster was young, sharp, with eyes that missed nothing. Agent Michael Chen, no relation to my Sarah, was older, with a voice that invited confidences. Mrs. Thompson, your brother has been on our radar since he scammed a veteran's widow out of her husband's death benefits. That's a federal crime. We've been building a case, but we needed someone on the inside, someone who could provide documented evidence of his patterns. You have that now? I said. We do, but we need more. We need you to help us find where he's hidden the money. I don't understand. He said it was gone. Agent Foster leaned forward. People like your brother always have a backup plan. Hidden accounts, offshore holdings, assets in other people's names. He's smart, but he's also arrogant. He'll have kept records. I don't have access to his home or office anymore. No, but you know him better than anyone. Think. Where would he hide something important? What did he value? What patterns did you see growing up? I thought about young Marcus, secretive even then. He'd had a hiding spot in our childhood home. A loose board in his closet where he kept baseball cards and later, cigarettes he thought I didn't know about. Our parents' house, I said suddenly. He insisted on keeping it after they died. Said it was for rental income, but he never rented it. It's been sitting empty for over 50 years. Agent Chen smiled. That's exactly the kind of thing we're looking for. They got a warrant that afternoon. I went with them, my hand shaking as I used my old key. The house was frozen in time. Furniture covered in sheets, photos still on the walls. It smelled of dust and memories. In Marcus's old room, I showed them the loose floorboard. Agent Foster pried it up. revealing not baseball cards but documents. Bank statements for accounts in the Cayman Islands. Deeds to properties I'd never heard of, and a leather journal filled with Marcus's handwriting. "It's all here," Agent Foster breathed. "Every victim, every transaction, every hidden asset." I picked up the journal. They were cold, calculating. Next to my name, he'd written, "Too trusting." Stroke was perfect timing. Estimate 2-3 years before complete control achieved. Retirement accounts first, house last. He'd planned it. My stroke wasn't an opportunity he'd seized, it was something he'd been waiting for. I found another entry. He asking questions about accounts, may need to accelerate timeline. Consider assisted living placement to limit her communication with others. He was going to put me in a home, I said numbly. Lock me away where no one would listen to me. A Tom, who'd insisted on coming, put his arm around me. But he didn't. You fought back. At the bottom of the hiding place was something that broke my heart. Photos from our childhood. Marcus and me at Christmas, at his graduation, at my wedding. In every photo, we were smiling. Had it all been a lie? Had he always resented me? Then I found a letter, yellowed with age. It was from our mother to Marcus, written just before she died. I'd never seen it before. "My dear Marcus," it read, "if something happens to us, Ellie will take care of you. She loves you so much more than you know. Be good to her. She's giving up so much to raise you. Someday, take care of her like she's taking care of you. Love." Mom, I sank into the dusty chair and cried. For the brother I'd lost, for the parents who'd trusted me with him, for the promise he'd broken. That evening, Patricia called with news. "The FBI is taking over the case. This is good, Ellie. Federal charges mean real prison time. And there's more, they've frozen accounts worth over $3 million. $3 million. But how? He's been doing this for almost a decade. You weren't the biggest score, Ellie. You were supposed to be the final one, the one that would set him up for life." The next few days brought a parade of Marcus's victims to my door. Some came to thank me for exposing him, others to share their stories. Harold Mitchell brought his wife, both of them crying as they described how Marcus had destroyed their plans for retirement travel. The Garrison family came with flowers and stories of how their mother had trusted Marcus like a son. But the visit that affected me most was from Marcus's business partner. "I should have warned you," he said, standing on my porch in the rain. I knew what he was capable of. When he stole from me, I was too ashamed to press charges. A successful businessman taken by his own partner. I couldn't face it. If I'd spoken up. "This isn't your fault," I told him, meaning it. "Marcus made his choices." "He talked about you all the time," Alan said, not kindly. "He said you held him back, that you made him feel small. He said Robert was weak and you were controlling." "I'm sorry, but I thought you should know." After Alan left, I sat with this new knowledge. All those years I'd thought we were building a relationship. Marcus had been building resentment. Every kindness I'd shown him had been seen as condescension. Every sacrifice had been viewed as a debt he never asked to owe. Dorothy came over that night with wine and tissues. "You can't blame yourself for loving him," she said. "Can't I? Maybe if I'd loved him differently, less intensely, given him more space." "Stop it." Dorothy's teacher voice was firm. "You gave that boy a home when he had nothing. You loved him the only way you knew how, completely. What he became is not your fault." The FBI arrested Marcus the next morning. It was on the news. Prominent Cedar Rapids realtor charged with elder fraud, money laundering, and wire fraud. The footage showed him being led away in handcuffs, his face hidden, his expensive suit wrinkled. I didn't watch. Instead, I worked in my garden, planting the tulip bulbs Robert had always loved. They'd bloom in spring, long after this nightmare ended. Life would go on. It always did. That night, unable to sleep again, I wrote Marcus a letter I'd never send. "Dear Marcus, I don't know who you are anymore. Maybe I never did. But I know who I was. A 20-year-old girl who loved her baby brother enough to become his mother. That girl did her best. She made mistakes, I'm sure. But she loved you with everything she had. I'm sorry that wasn't enough. I'm sorry you felt trapped by that love. But I'm not sorry for giving it. Love, even when it's rejected, even when it's betrayed, is never wrong. Your sister, Ellie." The federal trial was set for 6 months after Marcus's arrest. 6 months of depositions, evidence gathering, and sleepless nights. The FBI had charged him with 18 counts of wire fraud, 12 counts of elder abuse, money laundering, and identity theft. If convicted on all counts, he faced up to 40 years in prison. Patricia remained my lawyer for the civil case, but the criminal prosecution was led by Assistant U.S. Attorney James Morrison, a tall man with prematurely grey hair who spoke in measured tones but had eyes like a hawk. "Mrs. Thompson, I need you to understand something," he said during our first meeting. "Your brother has hired one of the best defense firms in Iowa. They're going to attack your credibility, your memory, your motivations. They'll paint you as a vindictive sister trying to destroy him out of spite. Are you prepared for that, Mr. Morrison? I taught 8th graders for nearly 5 decades. I've been called worse things than a vindictive sister by 13-year-olds. I can handle it." He smiled. "I believe you can." The preparation was exhausting. I spent hours with Morrison and his team, going over every detail, every document, every memory. They brought in other victims to testify. Betty Farmington in her wheelchair, Harold Mitchell with his oxygen tank, the Garrison family still grieving their mother, who died believing she was a burden to her children because she had no money left. 2 months before the trial, Marcus's lawyer requested a meeting. Against Morrison's advice, I agreed. We met in a conference room at the federal building. Marcus shackled at the wrists and ankles, orange jumpsuit replacing his expensive suits. He'd lost weight. His hair, always perfectly styled, was growing out grey at the roots. But his eyes still held that anger, that resentment I'd finally learned to recognize. "Ellie," he said, his voice flat. "Marcus." His lawyer, a polished woman named Rebecca Sterling, leaned forward. "Mrs. Thompson, my client is willing to plead guilty to lesser charges if you agree to speak on his behalf at sentencing. Ask for leniency." "No. You haven't heard the offer." I said no. "I looked at Marcus. You stole from elderly people. You destroyed lives. Betty Farmington sits in a Medicare ward because of you. Harold Mitchell had a heart attack from the stress. You targeted the vulnerable, the grieving, the ones who trusted you. Why would I ask for leniency?" Marcus's mask finally cracked completely. "Because you owe me. You ruined my life." Everything was about Saint Ellie, the selfless sister who took in poor orphan Marcus. "Do you have any idea what it was like living in your shadow? Never being good enough, never measuring up to perfect Robert, never being anything but Ellie's charity case." "You were never." "Yes, I was." Every teacher compared me to you. Every family friend reminded me how lucky I was. Even my girlfriends would say how wonderful you were. I couldn't escape you. So you decided to rob me. I decided to take what should have been mine. If our parents had lived, their estate would have been split between us. But you got everything. The insurance money, the house, their savings. You used it to pay for college, to buy your house with Robert. What did I get? Hand-me-downs and gratitude lectures. I stood up, my legs trembling but my voice steady. What did you get? You got a home when you had none. You got someone to help with homework, to cheer at your games, to pay for your college. You got love, Marcus. Unconditional, unwavering love. I'm sorry that felt like a burden to you. I'm sorry you couldn't see it for what it was. But that's on you, not me." As I walked to the door, Marcus called out, "I did love you once, you know. When I was little, before I understood what you'd taken from me, I turned. What did I take from you, Marcus? The chance to be my own person, to fail or succeed without everyone measuring me against my perfect sister. You had that chance. Every day for the last 50 years you had that chance. You chose to measure yourself against me. You chose to let resentment eat you alive. You chose to become a thief and a predator. Those were your choices, Marcus. Not mine." I left him there, slumped in his chair, his lawyer frantically whispering to him. That was the last time I would see my brother before the trial. The trial itself was a media circus. Local realtor accused of stealing millions from elderly made headlines across the state. The courtroom was packed every day, journalists, victims, curious onlookers, and my growing support network. Tom sat behind me every single day, steady as a rock. Dorothy organized a rotating schedule of former colleagues to ensure I never walked into that courthouse alone. Tyler and Emma, despite the pain of watching their father's crimes exposed, came when they could. "We need to hear this," Emma told me. "We need to understand who he really is." The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Morrison presented evidence of 18 separate victims over 10 years. The hidden accounts, the forged documents, the trail of financial destruction Marcus had left in his wake. When I took the stand, Sterling came at me hard. "Mrs. Thompson, isn't it true you were jealous of your brother's success?" No, I was proud of him. Until I learned that success was built on theft. You controlled his life when he was young. Strict rules, curfews demanding he get good grades. I established the same boundaries any parent would. He needed structure after losing our parents. But you weren't his parent, were you? You were barely an adult yourself. Perhaps you resented having to raise him? I was 20 years old, I said clearly. My husband and I had been married 6 months when my parents died. We could have let Marcus go into foster care. We chose to take him in. Every choice we made was out of love, not resentment. And yet, here you are, trying to destroy him. No, Ms. Sterling, I'm here because he destroyed himself. I'm just making sure he can't destroy anyone else. Sterling pulled out photos from our family albums, the ones found in our parents' house. These photos show a happy family. Was it all a lie? I looked at those photos. Christmas mornings, graduation days, family dinners. No, it wasn't a lie. That happiness was real. But somewhere along the way, Marcus decided it hadn't been enough. The defense's case relied heavily on character witnesses for Marcus, business associates who'd profited from his legitimate deals, recipients of his charitable donations made with stolen money, though they didn't know it, even a pastor who testified about Marcus's generous spirit. But the most shocking moment came when the defense called their surprise witness Jennifer, Marcus's ex-wife. Morrison objected immediately. She wasn't on the witness list. But the judge allowed it. Jennifer took the stand, and I could see Tyler and Emma tense up. What would their mother say? Thompson. I mean, Miss Carter. Sterling began using Jennifer's maiden name. You were married to the defendant for 8 years.
Yes. Was he ever abusive?
Violent. No. Never physically good provider.
Yes.
Though I later learned where the money came from. Did he ever speak about his sister? Jennifer's eyes found me in the gallery. All the time. What did he say? He said. Jennifer paused, choosing her words carefully. He said she was the only mother he'd ever really known, that she'd sacrificed everything for him, that he could never repay her. Sterling smiled. So he loved his sister. I think he did, in his way. But Marcus's love was complicated. He loved her and hated her in equal measure. He was grateful and resentful simultaneously. He wanted her approval desperately, but also wanted to prove he didn't need it. So this theft could have been a misguided attempt to prove his independence. Jennifer's voice turned steel. No, this theft was Marcus being Marcus. He felt the world owed him something. His sister was just the easiest target. He knew she'd trust him. Sterling tried to recover. But surely. I watched him plan it. Jennifer said quietly. The courtroom went silent. Not the specifics, but the idea. After Ellie's husband died, Marcus said, "She's all alone now. She'll need me. And when someone needs you, you can get anything from them." I thought he meant emotional support. I was wrong. When Marcus took the stand in his own defense, he was polished, articulate, playing the remorseful brother. "I made mistakes," he said, looking directly at the jury. "I got in over my head with bad investments. I kept thinking I could fix it, make the money back. I never meant to hurt anyone, especially not Ellie. But Morrison destroyed him on cross-examination. Mr. Thompson, you say these were bad investments. Can you name a single investment firm you used?" I used several. Name one. Silence. "You can't because they don't exist, do they? You didn't invest this money. You spent it. On cars, on boats, on a condo in Chicago, on jewelry for your girlfriend. I was trying to maintain appearances for my business. Be stealing from elderly people. From your own sister who raised you." Morrison then played the audio recording from my kitchen, Marcus's cruel words filling the courtroom. Several jury members visibly flinched. "Does that sound like someone who made mistakes, Mr. Thompson? Or someone who knew exactly what he was doing?" The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. I was sitting in my garden when Sarah Chen called with the verdict. I couldn't bear to be in the courtroom, couldn't watch them take Marcus away. "It's over, Ellie," she said gently. "He was found guilty on all charges. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt empty. I'd won, but what had I won? My brother was going to prison. My family was destroyed. The money might be recovered eventually, But the relationships, the trust, the love, that was gone forever. The sentencing was set for 2 months later. Morrison asked me to prepare a victim impact statement. I spent weeks writing and rewriting it. How do you summarize the devastation of being betrayed by someone you raised? How do you explain the theft of not just money but trust, love, security? The night before sentencing, Tyler and Emma came to see me. We want to speak at the sentencing, Emma said. Not for Dad, but for you. The judge needs to know what he took from all of us. You don't have to do that. Tyler took my hand. Aunt Ellie, you raised us too, in a way. Every holiday, every family dinner, you were there. You were the grandmother we never had. He didn't just steal from you. He stole from our whole family. The day of sentencing arrived cold and bright, one of those crisp Iowa mornings that Robert used to love. I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting the same navy dress I'd worn throughout the trial, when the doorbell rang. It was Betty Farmington's daughter, Carol, who'd flown in from California. Mrs. Thompson, she said, tears already streaming. My mother passed away 2 weeks ago, and my heart sank. Oh, Carol, I'm so sorry. No, please. I need to tell you something. Because of your courage in exposing your brother, the FBI recovered some of my mother's money. Not all, but enough that we could move her to a better facility for her last days. She died with dignity, in a clean room, with flowers by her bed. She died knowing she wasn't forgotten. I held Carol as she sobbed. Another casualty of Marcus's greed, but at least Betty had found some peace at the end. The courthouse was even more crowded than during the trial. Judge Samuel Harrison, known for harsh sentences in fraud cases, presided. Marcus sat at the defense table, wearing a suit that hung loose on his diminished frame. He didn't look at me when I entered. We'll begin with victim impact statements, Judge Harrison announced. Harold Mitchell went first, wheeling his oxygen tank to the podium. Your Honor, I'm 78 years old. My wife and I saved for 50 years for our retirement. We wanted to see the Grand Canyon, visit our grandchildren in Seattle. Marcus Thompson took that from us. But more than the money, he took our faith in people. How do you learn to trust again at my age? The Garrison family spoke next, 3 adult children describing their mother's final years of confusion and shame, believing she'd failed them by losing all her money. Then it was my turn. I walked to the podium on unsteady legs, my written statement in my shaking hands. But when I looked up at the judge, then at Marcus, I set the papers aside. Your Honor, I've written and rewritten what I wanted to say dozens of times. But standing here now, only one thing matters. Marcus Thompson was my brother. I raised him from age 16. I loved him as my own child. And he used that love as a weapon against me. I turned to look directly at Marcus. You said I'd die alone and unloved. You were wrong. This courtroom is full of people who support me. But look at your side, Marcus. Your lawyer paid to be here, that's all. Your children are here, yes, but they're sitting behind me, not you. Your ex-wives aren't here. Your business partners aren't here. You're the one who's alone. The real tragedy isn't the money you stole. It's the love you threw away. I would have given you anything. Legally, lovingly, freely. All you had to do was ask. Instead, you chose to take. You chose to hurt not just me, but dozens of vulnerable people. Why, Marcus? What was so broken in you that this seemed like the answer? Marcus finally looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the 16-year-old boy who'd stood in my spare bedroom, lost and frightened. You want to know why? He said, standing despite his lawyer's attempt to stop him. Because I was never good enough for you. Perfect Ellie with her perfect husband and perfect life. You saved me, and I was supposed to be grateful forever. Do you know what it's like to owe someone your entire life? To know that nothing you achieve is really yours because someone else made it possible. That's not. You introduced me as the brother I raised until I was 40. The brother you raised. Like I was a project, a charity case you never let me forget. Judge Harrison intervened. Mr. Thompson, sit down. But Marcus continued, his voice rising. Every success I had, you'd say, I'm so proud of what you've overcome. Every failure, you'd swoop in to fix it, to save poor Marcus again. I didn't want to be saved anymore. I wanted to be my own person. So you became a thief? I asked quietly. I became someone who didn't owe you anything. No, Marcus. You became someone who owes 18 elderly people their life savings. You became a federal prisoner. You became a man whose own children are ashamed of him. Was it worth it? Marcus slumped back into his chair, the fight leaving him as quickly as it had come. Tyler and Emma spoke next, and their words were devastating. "My father taught me to ride a bike," Tyler said, his voice steady but his hands clenched. "He taught me to throw a baseball, to tie a tie, to shake hands firmly. He also taught me, through his actions, that family is disposable when it becomes inconvenient. That love is conditional on what someone can do for you. Those aren't lessons I'll pass on to my children." Emma was crying before she even began. "I'm in law school because I wanted to be like my dad, successful, charismatic, able to convince anyone of anything. Now I'm going to be a prosecutor to stop people like him." "Aunt Ellie, you asked what was broken in him. I think he was broken by the idea that accepting love meant accepting debt. He couldn't see that love freely given requires no repayment." When the victims finished speaking, Judge Harrison called for a recess. In the hallway, I was surrounded by supporters: Tom, Dorothy, Sarah Chen, even some of Marcus's former clients who'd come to see justice done. "You okay?" Tom asked, his hand gentle on my shoulder. "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel vindicated, but I just feel sad." When court resumed, Marcus's lawyer made a plea for leniency, citing his lack of prior criminal record, his contributions to the community, the psychological trauma of losing his parents young. Then Marcus spoke for himself one last time. "I'm sorry," he said, but he was looking at his children, not at me or the other victims. "Tyler, Emma, I'm sorry I became someone you can't respect. I'm sorry I destroyed our family for money that's all gone now anyway." He turned to me. "Ellie, you want to know what was broken in me? I think I broke myself, piece by piece, every time I chose resentment over gratitude, every time I chose pride over love. You offered me a home, and I turned it into a prison in my own mind. That's on me, not you." It was the closest thing to real remorse I'd heard from him. Judge Harrison's expression was stern as he delivered his sentence. "Mr. Thompson, you've been convicted of systematic fraud targeting society's most vulnerable members. You betrayed the trust of elderly clients who came to you for help during the most difficult times of their lives. Most egregiously, you betrayed the sister who raised you, who loved you unconditionally. The pre-sentencing report indicates you have assets hidden in various accounts, totaling approximately $3.2 million. These will be seized and distributed among your victims through restitution. However, this doesn't begin to address the emotional and psychological damage you've caused. For the federal charges of wire fraud, I sentence you to 20 years. For identity theft, 5 years. For money laundering, 10 years. These sentences will run concurrently for a total of 20 years in federal prison. 20 years. Marcus would be 88 when he got out if he lived that long. Furthermore, Judge Harrison continued, you are ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, totaling $4.7 million. Your realtor's license is permanently revoked. Upon release, you'll have 5 years of supervised probation and are barred from any fiduciary role for life. As the bailiffs prepared to take Marcus away, he looked at me one more time. "Ellie, for what it's worth, you were a good sister. The best. I just couldn't see it."
I know,
I said softly. "I've always known." They led him away, and I never saw my brother again. Outside the courthouse, Morrison shook my hand. "You did the right thing, Mrs. Thompson. Because of you, 18 elderly people will recover at least some of their money. More importantly, Marcus won't be able to hurt anyone else." That evening, there was an impromptu gathering at my house. Tom brought pizza, Dorothy brought wine. Sarah Chen brought case files to show me how the recovered funds would be distributed. Tyler and Emma sat on either side of me on the couch, their presence a comfort. "I keep thinking about what he said," I told them. "About introducing him as the brother I raised. Was I really that condescending?" Emma squeezed my hand. "Aunt Ellie, you were proud of raising him. That's not condescension, that's love." He just couldn't tell the difference. Around 9 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Tom answered it and returned with an envelope. "It was in your mailbox. No postage, just your name." Inside was a letter in Marcus's handwriting. He must have written it before the sentencing, arranged for someone to deliver it. "Ellie, by the time you read this, I'll be in prison. I wanted to tell you something I couldn't say in court, something I've never told anyone. The day Mom and Dad died, they were coming to my baseball game. I'd begged them to come. Thrown a tantrum when they said they might be late. They were rushing to make it on time when the accident happened. For 56 years, I've carried that guilt. Every time you were kind to me, it felt like salt in that wound. You were raising the boy who killed our parents. I know now that's not rational, that it wasn't my fault. But 16-year-old Marcus believed it, and that belief poisoned everything that came after. I couldn't accept your love because I didn't think I deserved it. I couldn't be grateful because gratitude meant acknowledging what I'd taken from you. Not just parents, but your youth, your freedom, maybe even your ability to have children of your own. So I took your money instead. If I was going to be the villain in my own story, I might as well profit from it. I see now how twisted that logic was. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that underneath all that resentment and greed was a frightened boy who loved his sister but hated himself more. Marcus? I read the letter 3 times, then handed it to Tyler and Emma. They read it together, tears streaming down Emma's face. All those years, I whispered. All those years. He was carrying that guilt. It doesn't excuse what he did, Tom said gently. No, it doesn't. But it explains it. He wasn't just stealing money. He was punishing himself and me for a tragedy that wasn't anyone's fault. I stood and walked to the mantel, where a photo of our parents sat beside one of Robert. They were all gone now, Mom, Dad, Robert, and in a way, Marcus too. But I wasn't alone. My living room was full of people who'd stood by me, fought for me, supported me through the worst betrayal of my life. Marcus had been wrong about everything, but especially about this. I was surrounded by love. 5 years have passed since Marcus went to prison. 5 years of rebuilding, recovering, and discovering who Eleanor Thompson really is when she's not defined by taking care of someone else. The restitution money came through slowly but steadily. The FBI recovered more than anyone expected. Marcus had been meticulous in his record keeping, which ultimately became his downfall. I received about 70% of what he'd stolen from me. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to keep my house, restore my savings, and maintain my independence. More importantly, I made sure every one of Marcus's other victims received their share. Harold Mitchell and his wife finally made it to the Grand Canyon. They sent me a postcard, 2 tiny figures dwarfed by that magnificent canyon, smiling like newlyweds. Thank you for giving us our dreams back, they wrote. The Garrison children were able to give their mother a proper memorial with the recovered funds, creating a scholarship in her name at the community college. She always wanted to help young people get educated, they told me. Now she can. As for me, the money was just numbers in an account. What mattered more was what grew from the ashes of my brother's betrayal. Tom Bradley became more than just a neighbor who'd helped with my case. Somewhere between sharing evidence files and late-night strategy sessions, we became friends. Then, one evening about a year after the trial, as we sat on my porch watching the sunset, he took my hand. Ellie, I know we're both too old for nonsense, so I'll just say it straight. I've fallen in love with you. Not looking for marriage or any grand gestures, just wondering if maybe we could face whatever years we have left together. Robert had been my great love, the man I'd built a life with for 45 years. I thought that part of my heart had been buried with him. But Tom showed me that hearts don't have limited capacity for love. They expand. We don't live together. We're both too set in our ways for that. But we have dinner together most nights, alternating between houses. He's teaching me chess. I'm teaching him to bake. We take walks every morning, his hands steady when my balance wavers, mine gentle when his arthritis acts up. You know what I love about being old, he said one morning as we walked past the park where I used to take Marcus to play. We don't have time to pretend things don't matter. Every day is a gift, and I choose to spend mine with you. Dorothy, my stalwart friend, was diagnosed with dementia 2 years ago. The early stages are cruel in their clarity. She knows what's coming, fights it every day. I visit her 3 times a week at the memory care facility, and on good days, we're 25 again, laughing about our students' antics. On bad days, she doesn't know me, but I sit with her anyway, holding her hand, being present the way she was for me during my darkest time. Promise me something, she said during one of her clear moments. When I can't remember anymore, tell me stories about the good times. Even if I don't know they're mine, maybe they'll make me happy. I promised, and I keep that promise, filling her silences with stories of our shared past, watching her smile even when recognition doesn't light her eyes. Tyler and Emma have become the unexpected joys of these later years. They visit regularly, call weekly, and include me in their lives in ways I never expected. Tyler married a lovely woman named Grace 2 years ago, and when their son was born last year, they named him Robert, after Uncle Robert, Tyler said, placing the baby in my arms for the first time. We want him to know about the grandfather he never met, the man who showed us what real integrity looks like. Emma graduated law school and, true to her word, became a prosecutor specializing in elder abuse cases. She calls me her inspiration, though I tell her she's become mine. Every case I take, I think about you in that courtroom, Aunt Ellie, she told me recently. How brave you were. How you stood up not just for yourself, but for all those other victims. You taught me that justice isn't about revenge. It's about protection. She's engaged now to a fellow prosecutor named David, a kind man with a gentle smile who treats her like she hung the moon. They're planning a small wedding next spring, and Emma asked me to walk her down the aisle. Dad won't be there, she said simply. But you will. You've always been there. Sarah Chen still checks in regularly, though her official involvement in my case ended years ago. She's become a friend, someone who understands the particular grief of family betrayal. Last Christmas, she brought her family to my house for cookies, her children delighting in decorating sugar cookies at the same table where Marcus once did his homework. You've created something beautiful from something terrible, she told me. That takes a special kind of strength. I've been volunteering at the senior center, teaching a weekly class on financial literacy and scam prevention. My story, once a source of shame, has become a teaching tool. Every week, elderly people come to learn how to protect themselves, how to recognize the warning signs, how to say no even to family members. My grandson's been asking for money, one woman told me after class, saying he needs it for school but something feels off. After hearing your story, I'm going to ask more questions. Good. Ask questions. Trust but verify. Love doesn't mean blindness. I received a letter from Marcus last year, the first contact since his sentencing. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. Ellie, I'm writing to tell you that Tyler and Emma have been visiting me. Not often. Maybe once every few months, but they come. We don't talk about what I did. There's nothing to say that hasn't been said. Instead, they tell me about their lives, and I listen. It's more than I deserve. I'm in the prison library most days now, helping other inmates with their legal documents, teaching basic literacy to those who need it. Ironic, isn't it? I'm finally teaching like you always said I should. You said I was good at explaining things, making people understand. You were right about that, like you were right about most things. I won't ask for your forgiveness. Some things are unforgivable. But I wanted you to know that the angry, bitter man who screamed at you in your kitchen, he's trying to become someone else. Someone who might have made you proud if it wasn't too late for that. I heard about Tom Bradley. He's a good man. Be happy, Ellie. You deserve it. Marcus, I didn't respond. What was there to say? But I kept the letter, tucked in the drawer with the photos from our childhood, evidence that somewhere inside the man who betrayed me, a trace of my brother might still exist. The house feels different now. Not empty like it did after Robert died, but full in new ways. Tom's chess set on the side table, Emma's law books on the shelf from when she stays over to study, Tyler's son's toys in a basket by the couch. Photos cover the mantel, not just the past but the present. Tom and me at the botanical gardens, Tyler's wedding, Emma's law school graduation, the senior center's volunteer appreciation dinner where I received an award. Marcus was wrong about so many things, but the thing he was most wrong about was this. I haven't died alone and unloved. Instead, I've lived surrounded by a love I couldn't have imagined. Not the love I expected or planned for, but the love that grew from choosing to trust again despite betrayal, to open my heart despite the risk, to build family from friendship and courage from pain. Last week was my 77th birthday. Tom organized a surprise party at the senior center. The room was full. Former students now grown with grandchildren. Colleagues from decades of teaching, Marcus's victims who'd become friends, Tyler and Emma and little Robert. Even Jennifer came. As I looked around that room, I thought about Marcus's cruel words that night in my kitchen. You'll die alone. Nobody will love you. He couldn't have been more wrong. But I also thought about the 16-year-old boy who'd stood in my spare room, lost and frightened, needing a home. I'd given him that home, that love, the best I knew how. That it hadn't been enough, that he'd grown to resent it, that he'd ultimately destroyed it. None of that diminished the love itself. Love given freely is never wasted, even when it's betrayed. Make a wish, Aunt Ellie! Emma called out as Tom brought the cake, ablaze with what looked like a small forest fire of candles. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in years, I couldn't think of anything to wish for. I had my health, considering. I had my home. I had financial security. Most of all, I had people who loved me, who showed up for me, who chose to be my family. So instead of making a wish for myself, I made one for Marcus. That somewhere in that federal prison he might find peace. That he might forgive himself for the accident that wasn't his fault and the choices that were. That maybe, just maybe, he might remember the good times. The birthday cakes. The baseball games, the Christmas mornings. And know that those moments were real, that the love in them was true, even if everything that came after was broken. Well, most of them. Tom helped with the last few, and the room erupted in applause. Speech! Someone called out, and others took up the chant. I stood, a bit unsteady but supported by Tom's hand on my elbow, and looked at all these faces. Some I'd known for decades, some just a few years, all choosing to be here, to celebrate another year of Eleanor Thompson's life. When I was 20, I thought I knew what my life would look like. Marriage to Robert, children, teaching, retirement, grandchildren. Life had other plans. I couldn't have children. My parents died young. The brother I raised, I paused, then continued. The brother I raised taught me the hardest lesson of my life, that love doesn't always protect us from hurt. But everyone in this room has taught me something more important, that hurt doesn't have to protect us from love. I raised my glass of punch. Tom had wanted to spring for champagne, but most of us were on medications that didn't mix with alcohol. To second chances, I said, to chosen family, to the courage to trust again, and to the truth that it's never too late to start over. As everyone toasted and the party continued around me, I felt Robert's presence, not as a ghost or a sadness, but as a warmth, an approval. He would have liked Tom. He would have been proud of how I'd handled Marcus's betrayal. Most of all, he would have been glad that I hadn't let it destroy me. The party went on until the senior center had to close. As Tom walked me to his car, he insisted on driving after dark now. My night vision not what it used to be. I took one last look at the building where I'd found purpose again, where I'd turned my pain into prevention, my story into strength. You know, Tom said, opening my door with the old-fashioned gallantry that his generation never quite abandoned. Marcus did get one thing right in that terrible speech of his. What's that? Something did happen after he said those awful things. Just not what he expected. You became stronger, braver, more loved than ever. You took his worst moment and turned it into your best chapter. As we drove home through the quiet streets of Cedar Rapids, past the school where I'd taught, past the church where I'd married Robert, past the courthouse where I'd faced Marcus, I realized Tom was right. Something had happened. I'd discovered that I wasn't just Robert's widow or Marcus's substitute mother or a retired teacher living in the past. I was Ellie Thompson, 77 years old, survivor of betrayal, surrounded by love, still learning, still growing, still becoming. And that was more than enough. It was everything. Fun fee epilogue. Today marks exactly 6 years since Marcus screamed those words at me. I'm sitting in my garden, the one I've expanded with Tom's help, writing this story for Emma's first child, due next month. She wants the baby to know their family history. All of it, even the painful parts. How else will they learn? She said, her hand on her growing belly. That families aren't perfect, that love is complicated. That strength isn't about never falling, but about getting back up. Tyler and Grace are expecting their second child too. They're planning to move closer, just a few blocks away. We want the kids to grow up knowing you, Tyler said. Really knowing you, not just visiting on holidays. The restitution payments still trickle in occasionally as the FBI finds more hidden assets. I donate most of it now to a fund Sarah Chen helped establish for elder fraud victims who don't have the resources to fight back. Dorothy passed away 3 months ago. I was with her at the end, holding her hand, telling her stories about the time we chaperoned the 8th grade dance and caught the principal's son trying to spike the punch. She smiled, even though I don't think she knew who I was. At her funeral, Hundreds of former students came to pay their respects. We all shared stories, laughing through our tears, celebrating a life well lived. Tom's health is declining, his heart, the doctor says. We don't talk about it much, but we've made our plans, said what needs saying. He wants to be cremated, his ashes scattered in the garden we've built together. So I'll always be around to help with the weeding. He jokes. Though we both know I'll be the one needing help soon enough. I received another letter from Marcus last week. He's enrolled in college courses through the prison education program. At 68, he's finally becoming the teacher I always thought he could be, tutoring other inmates for their GEDs. He doesn't ask for forgiveness anymore, doesn't make excuses. He just shares what he's learning, who he's becoming, the small ways he's trying to make amends to the universe for the harm he caused. I wrote back this time. Just a short note. Marcus, I'm glad you're finding purpose. Mom and Dad would be proud of you for helping others learn. Ellie, it's not forgiveness. Some wounds cut too deep for that. But it's acknowledgement that even those who betray us aren't beyond redemption, even if that redemption comes too late to undo the damage. As I finish writing this story, the sun is setting, painting the Iowa sky in shades of pink and gold. Tom is dozing in the chair beside me, the evening news forgotten on his lap. Tyler just texted that they're coming for dinner tomorrow. Emma called to say she felt the baby kick during her closing argument in court today. This kid's going to be a fighter, she laughed. I think about 20-year-old Ellie, suddenly responsible for a teenage brother, so certain she could love him enough to heal his wounds. I think about 40-year-old Ellie established in her teaching career, watching Marcus succeed in real estate, believing they'd built something beautiful from tragedy. I think about 72-year-old Ellie, shattered by betrayal, certain her life was over. All those Ellies were wrong about how things would turn out. But they were right about one thing. Love is always worth the risk, even when it leads to heartbreak. Because from that heartbreak, if we're brave enough, new love can grow. Marcus said I'd die alone and unloved. Instead, I've lived. Fully imperfectly. Surrounded by more love than I ever imagined possible. And I'm not done yet.